US ban on ZTE isn't just threatening its existence, it may also impact the Chinese economy as well as the wider global technology space. The ban could threaten the jobs of 75,000 people in China and elsewhere, including plants in India and several research and development centers in the US. It will also hit every company in ZTE's supply network, and a lot of them are American firms that have substantial business ties with the Chinese company. They include Qualcomm, Intel, and Acacia Communications. If the crisis worsens, it could slow the development of 5G. That's the next generation of wireless mobile technology. ZTE is one of its major developers. Well, for more on ZTE's trials and tribulations, I'm joined by George Koo, live from Mountain View, California. He's the founder and former managing director of International Strategic Alliances and a regular contributor to the Asia Times. Welcome, George.
Hello there.
So why is the US ban delivering such a heavy blow to ZTE's businesses?
Could you repeat that?
Sure. Why is the US delivering such a heavy blow to ZTE's businesses?
Well, I can't explain as to why. I think there is a opportunity to teach Chinese companies a lesson in the technology war between U.S. And China. And unfortunately for ZTE, in the space that they're in, the mobile phone area, they're very dependent on the chipsets that's made by U.S. suppliers. And so this is why it's such a devastating blow when they were cut off.
Now, the U.S. says they imposed this export ban on ZTE for violating U.S. sanctions on Iran and the DPRK. So what were some of the mistakes that led to ZTE getting to this point?
Well, I don't have the details of the dispute between the company and the U.S. government, but apparently ZTE had made some agreement to not sell to Iran, also to apparently suspend certain employees, and according to the U.S. government, they didn't do that, and that gives the U.S. the excuse, the provocation, if you will, to cut ZTE off at its knees.
So how does this case tie in with the current trade tensions between China and the U.S., especially in these high-tech sectors?
Yeah. Well, I think in the semiconductor area, China is especially vulnerable because so much of the critical technology is in U.S. hands. And this is not only in terms of chip design, which I think Chinese companies are doing very well and are catching up, but in the making of the silicon chips, the equipment necessary to make this extremely sophisticated, extremely tight specification type on the chip, most of that equipment is either in the Americans' hands, some are in Japanese hands, some are in EU, and they are restricted in terms of being able to sell that equipment to China.
So, George, how does the Chinese government view this ZTE case, and what's the reaction from everyday Chinese people?
Well, I think it's a big shock. It's a rude awakening. I think it's going to convince China that they're going to have to find ways to wean off the U.S. Semiconductor technology, and that won't happen overnight. It's going to take some time to be able to develop your own equipment. Actually, the fastest way, frankly, to catch up, because the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC we call it, is probably the world-leading manufacturer of integrated circuits for everybody. Even the U.S. companies are concentrating on designing the chip and give it to TSMC to manufacture. So one of the quickest way to catch up, unfortunately, would be to occupy Taiwan and take over TSMC.
So then how do you see this ban affecting global tech companies and their strategies then in the U.S.?
Well, I think the U.S. approach of trying to stymie China's development and growth is a wrong-headed approach, because eventually China will catch up. And in some situations, they already have in certain technology sectors. So this is a very short-sighted solution. It's not a long-term solution. The long-term solution is to be competing openly, to emphasize the educational training and grow your own talent at home.
All right, thank you so much for your insights. George Koo there of International Strategic Alliances.